So it starts with a really good, bright, clear why you are in business.
Okay, so Rolf, can you start off by telling us why you think storytelling is so important in business?
I think the best way to answer that question is to look at successful companies today and what are the companies valued by, and they're valued by their brands, and a good brand has to have a very strong narrative, a big story. And if you look at Apple, used to be the most valuable company, now it's surpassed by Google, but both of those two companies have great stories and are run by great storytellers. So I think the valuation and the way we look at those companies is the best way to see the importance of storytelling.
Do you think the results are measurable though?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a good measure is how investors value a good story, and I think a lot of companies that are not yet showing a profit are valued very highly because of the story that surrounds that company and the way they portray their business and the way they tell their story. And if you look at established companies, historically companies like Ford, was a great, had a great narrative, a great story, and today Apple would be the showcase of a company that really succeeded with sticking with a very clear sort of focused North Star for what they do, and they've proven to be extremely successful as a business.
In terms of details? What are we looking for? What's the important or the crux of the story? What do they need to include?
Well, I think the first, I always say that when you talk about storytelling, you have to be focused on the big story, and then you have to have many, a big stream of stories that supports the big story. And the big story for me is about having a very clear idea about what you're all about, the purpose, as we describe it, that really brings home to people why you are in business. And then you have to bring that out in your marketing, and it has to define your branding and all your marketing communication. So it starts with a really good, bright, clear why you are in business.
And I guess you have to make it relatable to the consumer in some way.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, this distinction between B2B, B2C, and all of that is getting less and less relevant. It's all about people to people, and consumers are people, investors are people, and you have to have a story that really connects with us as people, and that brings what you do to life and has a clear logic, and it's exciting.
I guess there's different ways of going about that though now as well, through social media, different campaigns, and advertising is far different than when it used to be.
Absolutely, and this is why storytelling has become so important, because a short story is a way of getting people interested, making them stop and listen. Because what do we do today? We look at our iPhones, iPads, TVs. That moment when the whole family was together in the living room watching TV is all gone, and we're all on different devices, and the only way to really get people's attention is to tell a good story and make them stop and listen.
Do you think how do people go about finding their target market though? If you're saying that you're not a unit as a family anymore, you've got youngsters on these types of sites, the adults on different mediums. So how do you try and cater for as mass public as you possibly can?
First of all, you have to have a very clear overall idea. Then you have to have a narrative that kind of connects with the target audience, and so understanding and the target audience and doing research is more and more important. And there's so many sophisticated ways you can analyze what's going on the web today and see who influences who, and then you find the storytellers. One classic example is what Nespresso did with George Clooney historically, and where he became their sort of narrator of the Nespresso story, and it's been connecting with the target audience for a very, very long time, and it's still a very successful campaign. And there are many examples that was based on very distinct and clear research on what they needed to do to have that connection.
That is an example of it going well, but do you think communication and storytelling can actually prevent crisis from occurring, or is it more the kind of the clean-up situation of how a crisis is perceived?
Well, I think that storytelling needs to be part of your everyday leadership. So you have to tell stories to get your people with you. You have to tell stories to connect with the societies. If you run an operation that is tied to a lot of risk, you need to make sure that you connect with all your stakeholders. So by being a good kind of storytelling organization, you build a reservoir so that you're more resilient against a crisis. But a real crisis cannot really be prevented by a good story, but it can help you come out of it quickly, and it can build more trust with the audience that then makes you much more resilient against a crisis situation.
It's certainly very interesting, but perhaps just lastly, how do people learn to become a good storyteller? How can they get more information?
There are many entrances, but you can practice this. But people, what's a good story? And I often refer to the Earl of Sandwich. He was a very avid bridge player, and he had one problem: he couldn't play bridge and eat at the same time. So he told his butler to come up with the sandwich, so he could, so he didn't get sticky fingers. And in this, you have the essence of a story. You have the character, the Earl of Sandwich. He had a problem; he couldn't play card while eating, and the solution was the sandwich. So, by focusing on the character and by focusing on the tension and the problem, and then the solution, you have the essence of a story. And I cannot think about a better way of sort of explaining in very shortly what a story is all about. But you must never forget about the character, and that's what we often do. We forget to bring the people into it.
Well, it certainly is very interesting, Rolf. Thank you for coming in and sharing your story on this topic with us today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Okay, well, that's all from Rolf and myself for the moment, but please do keep on clicking back to Dukascopy TV. Goodbye for now.